This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone. Thanks for joining us yet another Sunday on The Roger Stone Show. We're here at 77 WABC, the most influential, powerful AM station in the United States. And we talk with you every Sunday to give you the inside scoop on politics, news, history, and, well, style. It is amazing, the Democrat convention that just recently took place, either the outright lies, such as Donald Trump will cut Social Security benefits, which he has specifically denied from the beginning of the time he entered politics. Donald Trump, these are all quotes from Kamala Harris, sent armed mob to the U.S. Capitol. He fanned the flames. There was no armed mob. The only people with guns on January 6th were police officers and others in law enforcement. Not a single one of the protesters was found with a gun. That Donald Trump explicitly intends to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy. False. He's never said anything of the kind. He has an explicit intent to deploy active duty military personnel against our own citizens. Where do they get this stuff? He's going to end Head Start and provide preschool and child care cuts for all those programs for children. They say that he doesn't fight for the middle class. He only cuts taxes on billionaires, when in fact he's cut taxes like John F. Kennedy, like Ronald Reagan, across the board, and a rising tide lifts all boats. I've never seen a much disingenuous psyop than what we saw at the Democrat National Convention. She has said that she would enact wage and price controls, and that big companies that sell us food are gouging us, that is the cost of high prices. Our own John Catsimatidis, the grocer, real estate, and media magnate, was on with Maria Bartiromo on Fox, and he addressed that in terms that anyone can understand.
If the manufacturers are charging you $1,
yeah,
you have to pay your payroll, you have to pay your rent, you have to pay your electricity, and the margin in supermarkets traditionally has been 2%.
Yeah.
The shrinkage, which is the stuff that disappears,
yeah,
traditionally has been 1.5%.
Yeah.
The inner cities, what the problem is, the shrinkage and this additional security has gone up to 6%.
There you have it. John Katz telling it like it is. Whether any of this is going to work for the Democrats, I highly question. I'm not sure how many stupid people they think they are. They're trying to erase Joe Biden. By the way, we're going to be taking your calls very shortly. That number is 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Please call us here on The Roger Stone Show, whether it's about politics, the Democrats' convention, the rise of RFK, or you want to get some of the fine points of my mother's recipes. Yes, due to popular demand, I am going to lay out my Nana's meatball recipe, which has been a family secret that I had to wrench out of the hands of my sister. But we're going to have that before the end of the day. Now joining me is Joe McBride. He is the founder and chief executive officer of the McBride law firm. His courtroom practice has been focused on criminal defense, civil litigation, and defamation cases. He has worked for defendants who were charged in January 6th. He also very famously represents Andrew and Tristan Tate, the advocates for hypermasculinity, sobriety, self-responsibility, fitness, all the things that the hard left in this country hate. They're being politically persecuted for that even while we speak. We hope to talk to Joe about some of that as well. But Joe has been involved in a lawsuit questioning the trial in Manhattan under Judge Corcoran, pardon me. And he joins us now to talk about that case as well. Joe, thanks for joining us on The Roger Stone Show.
Thank you for having me, Roger. As always, it's a pleasure and honor to be here with you. I thank you for your continued patriotism and advocacy for the rights and liberties of American citizens and for the justice to get Trump back in. I know you often do this at considerable personal risk, and I thank you for it, and I appreciate you very much.
Judge Engoron was the name that I was grasping for. So that's a good place to start. We saw the spectacle of two trials in Manhattan that were politically motivated start to finish. Judge Engoron deeply conflicted, essentially judged that Donald Trump was guilty of essentially, I guess, financial fraud, business fraud prior to his having a trial, and sought to undervalue his assets while accusing Trump of overvaluing his assets. This trial was a farce, and you and working with some other great people have decided to do something about it. Tell us about this lawsuit.
So an amicus brief is a legal document that's filed in a court of appeals by a non-party to the case. So the brains really behind this brief is Isla Shapiro's team at the Manhattan Institute, who I worked with on this brief. And what an amicus brief allows people to do, public policy institutes like the Manhattan Institute, is to say, hey, listen, this is not only unfair to Donald Trump, but there are also serious public policy considerations at stake here. The outcome of this decision not only affects Trump, it affects New Yorkers across the board as well. So what do I mean by it? When you think about the judicial system, we know that the standard of proof in a criminal trial is beyond a reasonable doubt. And in most civil cases, the standard is a preponderance of the evidence, which means it's more likely than not that something happened. However, there is this sort of middle ground, an intermediary sort of no man's land, wherein when cases of fraud and other serious allegations are at stake, there is an intermediate standard of clear and convincing evidence. And under the clear and convincing evidence, I'll put it in layman's terms here, it is the removal of any serious doubt. So it's a much higher standard than the preponderance of the evidence standard. So we filed a brief alleging very succinctly and just there in black and white that Judge Engoron used the wrong standard, that he knew that it's par for the course in New York State that when there is a fraud case, that the clear and convincing evidence standard is what we use. But he did not use that. He chose to use the preponderance of the evidence standard, which favored Letitia James's prosecution against him. And that is very wrong. We know that the most important axiom in the American legal tradition is that all people are equal before the law. And when American citizens are treated differently than their neighbors solely because of who they are, the highest courts in our nation have routinely and rightly found that this kind of treatment violates the core principles of our legal traditions. This is because burdens of proof are designed to safeguard not only a defendant, but also the integrity of the entire judicial system. So when plaintiffs and prosecutors are held to lower evidentiary standards without cause, a defendant's due process interests and rights are jeopardized, and the integrity of the system is undermined. So that's precisely what happened in this case when Judge Engoron wrongfully applied the preponderance of the evidence standard to evaluate the civil allegations of fraud against Donald Trump and his associates. Now, the technical part of the brief contends that the allegations, which include quasi-criminal fraud, clearly should have been analyzed under the clear and convincing standard. But that's not what happened here. Our brief also outlines, and this is also technical, that New York State Executive Law 6312, under which Letitia James brought the case, allows for civil remedies based on criminal statute violations. So what does that mean? It means that there are very serious consequences for blowing trial in a civil case when you're Donald Trump or when you're any other business person of importance in New York State. Our brief, the Manhattan Institute, argues that James's approach, particularly through her public statements, effectively painted Trump as a criminal in the court of public perception and in that courtroom in Manhattan, and that she sought penalties comparable to those in criminal cases, and that the court's use of the lower standard failed to protect Donald Trump's due process rights, which led to a very unjust outcome in this case. Now, with regard to everybody else, here's the kicker. If you are a business person who wants to do business in New York, or if you're a New Yorker who's looking to start a business or to do business, you have a serious problem. Because if this decision is not overturned, then a new and very dangerous standard will have been established. And under this standard, there will be a lower burden of proof to examine allegations of fraud, which routinely happen as a matter of course in business, in any type of business. So this will have a chilling effect on New York State. Put differently, and I'll sum up here, when a company, when weighing to do business in New York, must now weigh this newly heightened risk of being examined under the wrong standard versus doing business in New York. Businesses may and likely will seek to operate in other jurisdictions with more favorable and predictable laws that would entitle them to the normally constitutionally protected standards. So in conclusion, our brief urges the appellate court to reverse Judge Engoron's decision against Trump. It's egregious. To reinstate the clear and convincing standard that has always been used in these kinds of cases, which will ensure the allegations against Trump are reviewed under the proper standard and will ensure that anybody else who has a fraud case in New York State will enjoy the same clear and convincing protection standard. Roger, the future as to whether or not New York State is a viable place to do business is at stake. That is why we filed this brief on behalf of Donald Trump and the citizens of New York State to make sure that there's fairness for people going forward.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Joe McBride, to my mind, one of the toughest, smartest, and hardest working lawyers in America today, someone who zealously fights for the rights of his client. And in this case, he is working for the public good. He is also, as I said earlier, the attorney for Andrew and Tristan Tate, who have only recently been rearrested in Romania, and the government is seeking their incarceration. We're going to talk to him about that when we return on the other side as well. So this is 77 WABC. Take a minute to grab the 77 WABC app and load it in your phone so you don't miss any of our great programming here at 77 WABC, whether it's Katz and Cosby, setting the day on Sundays, but also giving you at the end of the day a brief on everything important that happened in that daytime, whether it's my good friend Sid Rosenberg in the morning, my old friend Dominic Carter, of course, Frank Morano on the other side of midnight, Larry Kudlow, one of the godfathers of the economic growth under both Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. You don't want to miss any of this, not to mention the legendary Cindy Adams. So you want to download that app on your phone as soon as you can. I'm Roger Stone. We'll be right back with more of Lawyer Joe McBride.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Folks, we're just about 10 minutes away from taking your questions. We call it Stone Zone on the phone. You can go to 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222, and get in the queue. We're going to cover as many questions today as we possibly can. I'm here with Joe McBride, who is an attorney of note, a man who is known for his fierce advocacy of his clients, and he's talking to us about litigation that had been filed in the Engoron case. I have to ask you, Joe, we have a scheduled sentencing of President Donald Trump in the case brought against him by Alvin Bragg pertaining to business transactions that they somehow tried to transmute into a felony. And many, liberal Democrats are cheerleading that Trump should be incarcerated. Trump should be sent to Rikers Island immediately for the next year. Trump should have to stay at Rikers Island during the closing days of the campaign. What do you think is going to happen in the sentencing coming up in that case, in which Juan Merchan has turned down every legal request that he recused himself, despite the fact that he's had, in my opinion, egregious conflicts of interest?
That's a very tough question, Roger. The patriot and the hopeful person in me wants to say that in cases like this, people typically get fines and don't get sentenced to jail, and that's what will happen. The person who has watched democracy decline, and somebody like Judge Merchan, we all know what his daughter's been up to in terms of her organization profiting off of this persecution of Donald Trump, makes me think that he's going to try to sentence him to jail. It's a very hard speculative question. I think that it would be political suicide for the Democrats to send him to jail, but they very well might. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But the question with Trump is a indication of the bigger problem, and these people have turned the judicial process, which is supposed to be cloaked in constitutional protections and due process, they've turned it into the process is now the punishment. And that's what this is about. They want to bankrupt you. They want to cancel you, disenfranchise you, persecute you before you've actually had your day in court. And now when your day in court happens, it's a sham. What happened to Donald Trump in both of these cases is an absolute disgrace. I certainly hope he doesn't go to jail, but, he very well may.
I agree with your assessment that I think it would be an enormous overreach. I think it would backfire spectacularly. I think it would essentially prove that this is all politically motivated and is, in fact, election interference. That's one man's opinion. On the other hand, people who are infected with Trump derangement syndrome often have it cloud their best judgment. And the hatred for Donald Trump, I see it online every single day. There's a phenomenon out there, by the way, called assassination deniers. These are people who believe that President Trump was not shot or shot at in Butler, Pennsylvania. They therefore don't believe that Corey Comparatori, the valiant firefighter who died from a bullet shot wound to the head after shielding his own wife and daughter, wasn't shot, that this was all staged. It was a psyop. Some cases they say Roger Stone arranged it. That's outrageous. But it shows you how demented some people have gotten. Again, we're going to be taking your calls here shortly. I ask you to get in, if you can, at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. Anxious to take your calls on politics, particularly the Robert Kennedy announcement, which has roiled this race. I have to ask you, Joe, about your very well-known clients, the Tate brothers, Andrew and Justin Tate. I have followed them for some time because some of the young men who work for me are acolytes of theirs. They believe in masculinity and discipline, reverence to God, sobriety, free enterprise, physical fitness. They adhere to this as a life's philosophy. And it appears to me, I watched a great interview with Andrew Tate and Tucker Carlson. I really didn't know who he was until then, but then I came to have enormous respect for him. I think he and his brother are being smeared outrageously, what appear to me to be fabricated crimes, but they have many, many friends and supporters in this country. So, Joe, tell us what's going on with the brothers Tate.
Well, in the Florida defamation case that we have against their wrongful accusers, that case is going well. We just survived motions to dismiss. We are proceeding to discovery with regard to the defamation charge and the civil conspiracy charge against them. This is very helpful to the case against them in Romania because the prosecutors in Romania had buried the evidence for the previous 2 years. We were able to publish that evidence to the court and to the public in the American judicial system. And by doing so, reverse engineer and sort of backdoor the Romanian court and get that stuff to the Romanian judge and into the Romanian consciousness. And because of that, the prosecutor was no longer able to bury the truth regarding the allegations against Andrew and Tristan in Romania. So the judicial controls against them have been loosening for the past year, and the case has been falling apart in Romania. But because the Romanian government and the Romanian prosecutor in particular is like any other prosecutor who's gone rogue, he doesn't want to admit that he's wrong. So he's doubled down, he's tripled down on new allegations against them. Now, when I say new allegations, they're really old allegations that they're regurgitating. Essentially what they've done is they interviewed 33 women. 30 of these women supported statements in favor of Andrew and Tristan, saying these guys are great. 2 more of those women are actually their baby mothers. And the government is saying that because Andrew and Tristan bought their baby mother's cars, gave them money, put them in houses, that this is somehow money laundering, which is absolutely preposterous. This is just 2 good men taking care of the women who they had children with, like any other good man should do in this world. They are reaching for straws here because they have nothing. They know that their time is short. Our understanding is that, well, we know for sure that the United Kingdom has spent over $2 billion in an effort to cancel Andrew Tate. $2 billion, and that effort has failed across the board because what we see is a rise in popularity for Andrew and Tristan because of their message of male positivity, of male greatness, of not being ashamed of having testosterone and, traditional values. We also understand that Andrew and Tristan's outspoken support of Donald Trump and their endorsement of Donald Trump has garnered the attention of the Biden-Harris administration. And because of that, the U.S. Embassy and the political offices there in Romania is receiving substantial pressure from the Biden-Harris administration to re-prosecute them the way that Donald Trump has been prosecuted all over the place. The allegations against them are false. The process is the punishment. They will be vindicated in the end. I'm thankful that these are 2 very successful, rich gentlemen who can afford to fight, who have the finances and the courage and the moral support and the Constitution as men to fight against this stuff. I'm honored to be a part of it. They're going to be exonerated in the end. But until then, it's going to be a dogfight around every hill, upon every hill, and around every corner until truth and justice have won. And you just got to be relentless. These are two relentless guys. Our advocacy will continue to be relentless in pursuit of justice for them. They will be vindicated in the end, Roger. Just going to take some more time.
Well, please give them my regards and tell them that I'm praying for them and I'm watching the case carefully. And they just did an enormous favor for a friend of mine. Talk about that later in the show. Folks, I want to thank my guest, Joe McBride, from the McBride Law Firm, for joining us today on these two important topics. And when we come back, we're going to take your questions. Also going to get Nana's meatball recipe. You don't want to miss that. That number, once again, 800-848-9222. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.